What's up, you beautiful people? Welcome to another video. So, probably about 12 years ago is when I had my first real business success. And this was the first time in my life when I was starting to get around people now who were operating on a higher level than I had been previously. So coming out of college, all through my 20s, I was hanging out with dirtbag rock climbers. And they're great people. They're operating at the top of their sport. But they weren't people that society would look at and say, that is a top elite performer. That is one of the 1% of the population. Because a lot of times, we judge success as, monetary. And we look at people who are making a lot of money and we say oh, they're really successful. They're part of the 1%, whatever. For the purposes of this video, I want to share just 5 of the kind of counterintuitive lessons that I learned actually getting exposure to that top 1% of people who were making money. I mean, having been part of that 1% myself, it's not what you think, which is really interesting because before I had kind of stepped into that world and started to get to interact with, these people that you hear about in the news, that you see on social media, right? You have this perspective, or at least I did, that they have something that you don't. They must be smarter. They must be more competent. They must have been born with a silver spoon in their mouth. They have more resources. Life just was more fortuitous and lucky for them. I had all these expectations that there was a gap. There was something about them that was different than me. I couldn't quite pinpoint it. And it kind of put a chip on my shoulder too, because I was like, man, I could do what they did if I had exactly what they had, if I had that secret knowledge that they did. Well, the thing is, there's 2 things in particular that I realize is that the people, first of all, who were higher up on that game of success in business or financial success or whatever, the people that you look up to, they weren't there because they were necessarily better. They were there because they were standing atop a larger pile of failure than me. They had tried, it's really easy to think, look at somebody successful and think that they just got lucky and they just fell into it. But truly, there's 10 years of hard work behind every overnight success. And when you talk to these people again and again and again, you realize they have failed way more often than they have succeeded. The old adage that the master has failed more than the beginner has even tried. It's true with these individuals that we consider the 1% as well. They are standing atop a larger pile of failures than us. Number 2 is that they are not more capable. They are not smarter. In a lot of cases, they're kind of stupid. They're dumb enough to have the belief that they could do the thing. And they're smart enough to actually take action, but they're not necessarily super geniuses. I know so many people in this game where it's how did this person even get out of bed in the morning? I don't know how they haven't tripped over their feet. There's nothing about them that's particularly special in that way. But what they do is they have this unshakable belief in their ability to figure it out, and they are willing to fail in public. They have a very high tolerance for public failure. So they don't care what their friends or family, the world at large thinks about their failures. So again, they're standing on a larger pile of failures than us because they don't care what people think about their failures as they're trying to get to where they're going. And right there is probably what's keeping 90% of people from actually stepping into that next level of their own life, is the fear of failure. Not even the fear of failure, because most of us, we don't actually fear failure. We fear the judgments of the people we love as they judge our failures. Oh, I want to go build that business. I want to pursue this dream, but I'm afraid of what my brother's going to say if it fails, right? You actually probably don't care if the business fails. You would probably have more enjoyment in your life and satisfaction having tried and failed, but then having to come home for Thanksgiving and sit with your family and have them go, oh yeah, look at you, your cute little idea. And they're judging you, and that feels like shit, right? These top 1%ers, they don't have that. So let's put this aside. I want to get to the lessons, because I got 5 lessons here that, I think once you're aware that this is what's separating the 99% from that top 1, you can start to engineer your life around these. So the first one is, again, they're not smarter, but they are more decisive. This is crazy, is that most of the successful people that I know, they don't try to get to absolute certainty. They don't wait until they're 99% certain that the path that's in front of them is the right path. What they do is they get to 80%. 80% certainty. That's it. And then they say, good enough. And they go, because they know that anything above 80% certainty is you misleading yourself or selling yourself a fake bill of goods to believe that you're collecting more accurate data. But the truth is, your best insights, your best data is only as good as your ability to put it into motion in the real world. And as soon as you do, your best plan is going to be laid asunder, right? Plans are useless. Planning is essential. And so the top 1%, they understand it is better to get to 80% sure on an idea and then take action, because the truth is indecision kills more dreams than wrong action. That's number one. Number two is they play a completely different game than the rest of us. Like most of us were, or if you're like me, like you grew up with the mindset that like hard work was the way. Effort was correlated with how much money you made. Effort was correlated with your self-worth and your value in the world and your value to the marketplace. They don't play that game. Like most of the top 1%, they're like strategically lazy. They're not trying to work hard. They're trying to figure out how to get more output per unit of input. So they play the game thinking in terms of leverage. And they don't take the judgment of like, oh, you're not working 60 hours a week. Like, no, I'm going to work for 5 hours and figure out what's the highest leverage action I could take right now that can move the boulder, rather than going and chipping around at the boulder for the next 100 hours, trying to, reduce it to dusk. No, I'm just going to go find a lever. I'm going to then roll the boulder off the hill. Problem solved. And like again and again, the thing that was really hard for me to figure out with this is, especially as like an American, we correlate so much of our self-worth with how hard we're working. And it's like, oh, I worked 60 hours last week. It's like we wear that as a badge of pride. And a lot of hustle bros and like the guru culture of productivity is talking about how to get more and more and more done. But really, like the top 1%, they figure out how to do less, but better. And that is the entire game. Number three, they are obsessed with downside, not upside. And the way that like I think about this is, first of all, the top 1%, they play games where they know the upside is unlimited. They don't play games that have capped upside potential. Your W-2 job has capped upside potential. You can only make so much money in that job. It's correlated maybe to how many hours you're working, maybe to a Christmas bonus, but like you can't get 100x outcome working 100 times more inside that vehicle. Whereas in the game of business, if you put in 100 times more effort, you make 100 times more impact, you can get a 10,000% return on your effort. So they're already playing a game that they know has an asymmetric upside, potentially unlimited upside, right? But then they focus on the downside. And the question that they ask themselves isn't, how do I win? But rather, how do I guarantee that I can't lose? And my favorite idea around this is that when you make the process the prize, you will be willing to pay any price, right? Like if you know that playing the game of business, that building this thing, if you, or whatever, like you love it so much, the process of waking up every single day and getting to think about how can I help serve the world with this product or service, if that's the prize and not the $1 million, $10 million, $100 million bounty at the end of the rainbow, if instead it's just showing up every day, getting to do the thing that you love to do on your schedule without anybody coming and looking over your shoulder, that you get to be in control, like if that is the prize, then who cares if you get to the end of the rainbow? And here's the interesting consequence is that when you play the game from that perspective, who do you think makes it further along the rainbow? Is it the person who's walking up the mountain for a paycheck, or is it the person that's walking up the mountain because they love walking up mountains? Become that person, play that game, and you can't lose. So that's how you protect the downside rather than fixating on the upside. Number 4 is the top 1% guard their most valuable asset ruthlessly. Most people don't even know what their most valuable asset is. That's crazy, right? Like most people, you go on the street and you ask them, what's your most valuable asset? They're going to tell you time. Time is my most valuable asset. But then if you ask them, hey, can you give me 5 minutes? They're not going to hand you 5 minutes. That's not like a chit, like a bullion, like a gold coin. Like they're not going to give you anything. They're going to turn, they're going to look at you like, sure, I'll give you 5 minutes. What are they really giving you? They're giving you their attention, and their attention is a function of their energy. If they had no energy, if they didn't have breakfast that morning or in the last week, if they hadn't slept, they have no energy. They're just dead inert mass, right? So your energy is your most valuable asset, and where you deploy your energy is your attention. So it's what you do with it. And the top 1% obsess over this. How do I optimize, maximize, and then deploy my energy in the most effective way possible. So they fixate on their sleep, they focus on their nutrition, they focus on their health so that they have tons of energy to work with. And then they orchestrate their life in a way that turns their attention into a laser beam and it cuts through steel. And I'm telling you, if you just did those two things, even if you're in the wrong boat, rowing the wrong vehicle, whatever, you're in the W2, whatever, like if you just did those two things, your quality of your life would take on an entirely different texture, different color. So number 5, last but not least, is the top 1% are what I call engaged but unattached, which means they are really in it. They are really fixated on winning. They really want to play the game to the best. They want to beat people, right? But they don't tie their identity to the winning. Or at least, let me make a pivot here. Because up to this point, I've been talking about the 1% through the lens of like people that are successful, making a lot of money or have a big successful business. And that's actually not what I consider to be the 1% at all. The 1% are a different breed of animal entirely. That might be one aspect of it, is they have financial wealth, they have business, they have external accolades and all that stuff. But more important is internally, they have this peace and this energy, this coherence between their mission and its realization in the real world. And the people that I consider truly 1%, the people worth emulating, are the ones who have dialed in their mindset, their health, wealth, and their skills, like their ability to make an impact on the world. And so when I talk about them being engaged but unattached, like these people, they want to make an impact. They want to have domain mastery. Like they want to pursue things that have purpose. But if you can't make the jump from attaching your self-worth to your achievements, then you're never going to actually be part of the 1% that I'm talking about here. The true 1% are the ones that they value the shift in identity and who they are and their growth, their expanse, their evolution, more than the physical accolade, the physical accomplishment. And that's so hard, because the thing that gets most of us to like close to 1% are the achievements. That gets you like almost all the way there. But then to like finally take the step over and become like this new breed of animal, you have to dissociate from that same fuel system that got you 90% up the mountain. The last 10% can't be traversed until you find a different fuel source. And that fuel source comes from the internal drive. It comes from tracking your rate of identity transformation more than the numbers in the bank account growing, or the number of team members, or the number of customers you're serving, or the number of supercars in your garage. What matters to them are the inputs of their soul rather than the outputs that society values. And that right there, let's just say there's a reason that only 1% of people actually get to that level. It's quite difficult. But if you follow these 5 lessons, if you internalize them, if you think about how can I apply these to my life on a day-to-day basis, if you do that on a long enough time frame, maybe, just maybe, my friend, you can get there too. So that's going to do it for me, guys. See you in the next video.